This is Open Parameter Podcast, conversations about the intersection of life and art with artists from around the world. Come chat with us on our Discord server and get monthly early access to episodes by becoming a supporting member today at patreon.com/openparameter. You were just listening to an excerpt from Red Leaf Collection by composer Carolyn Schubring, and performed by members of the Vanguard Reed Quintet. Abby and I sat down with two members of Vanguard this week to chat about their recently released album titled Red Leaf Collection, and how the pandemic has affected their lives as musicians.
We are joined today by Mickayla Chapman and Sagar Anupindi, the clarinetist and oboist in Vanguard. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks so much, Abby. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I know Sagar from Eastman, but it's my first time meeting Mickayla. It's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Nice to meet you.
So let's start with the basics. Can you share with us when and how Vanguard formed?
Yeah, this is a fun story that I like to tell, because I've been with Vanguard since the very, very beginning, which no one else in the group can say. So basically, we started out just like any other student ensemble. It was just a group of five of us. We were aware of the Reed Quintet because of our friends, the Acropolis Reed Quintet, who are, I would say, probably one of the foremost reed quintets in the United States. They also formed at the University of Michigan, and they've had wide success since then. So we were aware of them. There's obviously a legacy there. So, a couple of us who formed the initial group were interested in starting a reed quintet. We got together. I think it was myself, bassoonist, and saxophonist were the first three, and then we added the two clarinet players. And yeah, we were just kind of a student ensemble. Even the first semester, we weren't registered. We didn't have coachings or anything. We were just doing our own thing. First semester, and then the next year, we that's when we started actually getting some coachings. We added Sean, our current saxophonist. He's the second oldest member in the group. And from there we started we started learning a bunch of music. And I think that was the year, that spring in March. So every year the University of Michigan hosts an in-house, for student ensembles, chamber music competition called the Dale and Nancy Briggs Chamber Music Competition. And so we competed, and we were awarded second prize, and as well as a prize for, I think they call it the Michigan Prize. It's best performance of a work by a University of Michigan composer, past or present. So we won those prizes, and that kind of started getting us a little bit more. I think with that year also we had applied for Fishoff, but didn't get in. And so that kind of got us thinking. The next year, we added Mickayla, and we were starting, and that was also the last year for most of us at Michigan. For 4 out of the 5 of us, I was finishing my undergrad. Mickayla and Sean were finishing masters, and our bass clarinetist was finishing his postgraduate degree. And our bassoonist had graduated the year previous. So we were really committed to doing everything we could with the ensemble that year. And we'll talk more about the commissions when we start talking about the album. But Fish Off was a big thing for us. We really wanted to go to Fish Off. We sent in our tapes and everything. We got accepted, and then we went. That was after we had graduated. We went to Fish Off, and um, I think very much to our surprise, we won the silver medal. um, I really don't think we were expecting that. I really don't think we really knew how well prepared we were for the competition. Um, and it was I think one of the coolest musical experience. It's incredibly stressful, but coolest musical experiences I've had. Um, and we're rehearsing like I don't know, like 3-4 hours a day every day for the 2 weeks leading up to the thing. So really, really intensive, and we grew a lot as an ensemble during that time. And so, like I mentioned, we'd all graduated at this point. So the conversation throughout most of the year was, do we want to keep this thing going after Fish Off? After we graduate, and then eventually was after Fish Off. And for most of us, it was yes. We really wanted to make this a part of our musical careers, which was, you know, I mean, we had great role models who, in the Acropolis Reed Quintet, who, we saw a lot because, a couple of them lived in Michigan, and they, are very still active in this area. So we had good role models. We were really, really interested in keeping this thing going afterwards. We added our current bass clarinetist, Nico, after Fish Off. And then, yeah, we've just been doing this kind of professional chamber ensemble thing ever since, which has been interesting because, it's a lot of us were still in school afterwards. I went on to Eastman where I met Abby, um, and Sean, our saxophonist, started a um, artist diploma at the University of Texas at Austin. Our bassoonist had started his DMA at Stony Brook University. So we were all still in school. Scheduling things is hard. Scheduling things
Yeah.
is really hard
And
when you're all in school.
well, and also
Yeah,
I have a full-time job.
yeah,
So, I work at the Detroit Symphony, in the education department, doing our education programming, and it's a very demanding, busy job. So, that coupled with people being in school, it's hard. But here we are 3 years later.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Coming up on 3 years since Fish
yeah.
Off, which is so wild to me, that it's been that long.
The
You
last
know,
year doesn't count.
right? Yeah.
Well, speaking of the last year, your group is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but where has everybody been this last year?
Yeah, so Sagar and I are in Ann Arbor. Once Sagar graduated Eastman, he came back home to Ann Arbor
Before
for yeah, yeah.
before I graduated,
Um,
unfortunately.
I still live in Ann Arbor. Only for the next month. I'm actually moving, but really, like, I'm only moving 20 minutes away. Like, just still Detroit area. Um, but I'm here. Nico, our bass clarinetist, he has been in Chicago the last 3 years. Um, and then Nico also wasn't in school during all of this. He also works an admin job and plays with the Chicago Civic Orchestra. Um, but he's in Chicago. Sean started out in Boston, or in Austin. Sorry, I get it confused. He started in Austin, and then right before the pandemic moved to Boston. So Austin to Boston. And then our former bassoonist, Joe, had moved to New York to do Stony Brook, his DMA at Stony Brook, but um, he has since left the group, and we have brought on a new bassoonist who actually is Jaquain, who is the African American fellow at the Detroit Symphony. So he's in Detroit with us, but he plays with the DSO, and I work at the DSO. So that the thing.
The northern DSO.
When you say DSO to
Yeah.
us, we think Dallas Symphony.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
But-
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm actually from KC, so I get it.
Well, and
But,
it's
yeah.
funny because a few years ago, the principal timpanist at the Detroit Symphony, Brian Jones, got the job at the Dallas Symphony, and has been the principal timpanist at the Dallas Symphony ever since. So he was the principal timpanist of the two DSOs, consecutively.
Love that. That's actually kind of awesome. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Before we get into discussing your album, which I'm very excited to do, I want to talk a little bit about the Reed Quintet as a chamber music genre. So for our listeners who may not know, the Reed Quintet is one of the more esoteric chamber music groups. Instead of the traditional wind quintet, which is made up of flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and horn, the Reed Quintet is composed of only instruments with reeds: oboe, clarinet, saxophone, bass clarinet, and bassoon. Can each of you share what drew you to this ensemble configuration in particular?
The sound. It's just such a vibrant, colorful, rich, there's so many like adjectives you could use to describe it, but I always describe it as addicting. It's just like I don't know why. It's such a cool sound to hear, like the reeds, the rumble, the the sauciness, there's just so much character to reeded instruments, and when you put 5 of them together, wind quintets are great and all of that, but you add the flute and the horn and they just have different timbres, but when you put all of these similar timbres together, I mean they're still different, but they're similar in a way, and when you put all of those together, it's this vibrant, colorful, amazing sound. And yeah, I heard the first time I heard Vanguard play, I was friends with all of them. And I literally had the thought to myself, God, I wish I could play in that group. And at the time, my friend Joey was the clarinetist, who is now in the Air Force Band and doing amazing in DC and everything. But I was so jealous. I was like, I wish I was Joey. Like, I wish I could play with them. Like, it's just such a cool sound. And because of the similarities between the sound, you just have so much room to be expressive within it at the same time, and it's addictive. I don't know, Sagar, maybe you have something to add to that, but
Yeah, I mean, I second all of what you just said. I think the thing I like to say about the Reed Quintet is, and this is not meant as a slight to the two ensemble configurations I'm about to mention, but I think it takes the best of what the woodwind quintet and the saxophone quartet have to offer and combines them. Because the woodwind quintet is known for all of this really, really great individualistic ability. Each of the instruments, and some in the best wind quintet writing, each of the instruments gets a chance to shine on its own and together as well. But it's really, to me, a lot of it is about the individual instruments, and they just happen to come together. And that's, the woodwind quintet is born out of, like, honestly, necessity. I don't think wind players had any other outlet for chamber music like that at the time that it was created. The saxophone quartet is, to me, so much about homogeneity. The saxophone quintet, like no other ensemble, can blend like crazy. No other ensemble that I know of can achieve that level of what a saxophone quartet can, other than maybe other ensembles with just saxophone. Um, so it takes that element and it takes the individualistic element of the woodwind quintet and it combines them in such a way that makes it, that results in everything Mickayla was just saying. We get so many great moments to shine as individuals, as soloists, but then there's also so many great moments where it's just all about the sound of the ensemble as a whole. And those two elements put together are just what makes this combination just so cool to me. Um, and like I came across it, like I've mentioned the Acropolis Reed Quintet a couple times. I think I heard their first album. I want to say in high school, but I don't think that timeline is right. But uh, I heard it, at some like end of high school, early undergrad, whatever, and like my first reaction was like, I need to do that. Like Mickayla's was, it was I need to do that, and um, and it's just the coolest thing that I get to do it now.
Yeah.
How many ever years later.
Yeah, who knew that a bunch of dudes in Amsterdam creating this ensemble would create such a phenomenon, but we're very much pro make Reed Quintet part of the standard chamber music rep literature
Absolutely. And
curriculum.
I have heard composers, and hopefully Del won't take this as an insult as he is a composer, but I've heard composers actually bemoan the fact that the instruments in a reed quintet don't blend together in a sort of traditional way. What is your response to that? Have you guys found any specific unusual colors that you can really only achieve with a reed quintet?
It's one of the big challenges in playing in this ensemble, because it is asked for in a lot of the music, is that homogeneous sound. Like I'm working on, I know this episode of the podcast will come out later than when I'm talking, but at the time of recording, we'll be posting a video of a movement from Mark Mellitz's Splinter, which is just completely like the four, other than the oboe, the other four instruments are in complete are meant to create a single homogeneous texture, and it's incredibly difficult because the instruments aren't uh don't have the same sound, same tone quality, and so like it's a challenge in terms of the balancing our dynamic levels, because saxophone tends to be loud just because it's the nature of the instrument. Matching articulation, because there are things that double reed players can do with articulation that single reed players just wish they could, and vice versa. Like I always yearn for being able to just start a note with like nothing. um and there's things, like I said, there's things that double reed instruments can do that single reed players have more trouble with, and so it's about finding balance between those things. And 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 it takes a lot of effort from each of us as players about really, like I have the kinds of things I have to do in some of this music is just like, you know it makes me wish I was a clarinet player, because it's it's what I have to do.
Yeah, it is challenging in a lot of ways, but w- when the writing is really good and it just pops and clicks into place, it's just the coolest sound. And we do have to fight a lot of these challenges, but you deal with those in other kinds of ensembles too. It's the typical stuff, but um as as a reed player, I think it's really just challenging because the response time is a
Mm.
little bit different for everyone, and learning each other's reed response, I think that is maybe one of the more challenging parts of the sound of oboes and clarinets and double reeds versus single reeds, just the response, or even register to register it, and
Mhm.
getting everything to lock right into place. I think that's one of the bigger struggles, but when it locks, it is mm, so great.
What sort of repertoire does Vanguard play? Your lists on your website include pieces ranging from transcriptions of works written for different instruments to original works written for the reed quintet. What kinds of what kinds of things do you play?
We try to play pretty much everything that exists for the Reed Quintet. We'll obviously get into this talking about our album and why we commissioned 6 pieces. There are a lot of the reason that we did that is because there's not a whole lot out there. There's there there is a lot more than there used to be for sure. Thanks to the Califax Reed Quintet, who is the original Reed Quintet, and Acropolis as well, and some other, other ensembles throughout the country or the world, really. But it's not anywhere close to the wind quintet repertoire or string quartet or saxophone quartet. There's just not as much out there. But Sagar can maybe talk a little bit about the range of things that we play.
Yeah, it's about it's has a lot to do with what Mickayla just said. It's a lot about necessity. Like, there's only so much repertoire, new original repertoire written for this configuration. And also there's no history of it either, right? The This ensemble, the Reed Quintet, was invented 35 years ago, which in the scheme of classical music is like a blip. That means nothing, right? So, you've got woodwind quintets, string quartets who are dealing with hundreds and hundreds of years of repertoire. But this ensemble is 35 years old. It was just a bunch of buds in the Netherlands, just a bunch of friends who got together, happened to play these instruments, I think, and created this ensemble out of nothing. They just were like, let's just make some music. Let's, make this happen. And I highly doubt that they had any idea that this was going to take off, but it did. And there are, I think, like hundreds of ensembles you can check out on the original group, the Califax Reed Quintet in the Netherlands. They have a Reed Quintet network map on their website where you can see like a lot of the ensembles scattered around the globe. So it's a very, very recent invention. And so there's only 35 years worth of original music for this ensemble. And so, if we're looking for something different, if we're looking for something older, you have to arrange it. You either have to, someone else has arranged it, or you have to do it yourself. And so that's where a lot of this older music comes into play. We're all brought up in the classical music, tradition. And so, we each have loves for different things from the past, which is, we can have an argument about that. That's a whole other conversation. But so that's part of it. But, we are one of the coolest things about the ensemble is that it's brand new, and is that there's so much room for new music here. And so that kind of feeds into why we commission music for the album and all that stuff. So if you want to talk about that, we can right now.
That's actually a beautiful segue for me. Thank you very much. So let's get into talking about your debut album. This was released in 2020, titled Red Leaf Collection, and comprised entirely of newly composed works written by composition students at the University of Michigan. Is that all right?
Mostly, yeah. By the time we released it, they weren't all students at U of M. When we commissioned them, they were all either undergrad or graduate students at the University of Michigan.
Even when we premiered most of those people weren't at that point either.
They were later on in their degrees, most of them. But yes, they were. We all went to school together at one point.
Got it. There's a University of Michigan connection there for everybody.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Yes. So can you give us kind of a play-by-play then of how you planned, how you commissioned the music, how you planned it, how you recorded that album? What is that whole timeline? And I know it was a multi-year timeline for you guys.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a very long story. Sagar should start it, and I'll interject.
Yeah. So, this was about, yeah, this was like very early into the ensemble's history. This was like, Sean, our saxophonist, had just joined. We were like semester 2 into this ensemble's history. And, we found a composer who was interested in writing a reed quintet. That was Douglas Hertz, who wrote the first piece on the album from Lisai's Time Knows No Bounds. He was interested in writing a reed quintet. We were like, yeah, absolutely. Because even then we knew the importance of having new music for the ensemble because again, like I mentioned before, it's just a very short history, and we need more music for it. So we worked with him for most of that year, and he was the first person we worked with. He was the only person we worked with in that composer we worked with in that year. So I think we did like a recording session of sorts that he needed for his purposes in like January of 2017. Yes, 2017. And then we premiered it at the uh, Briggs Chamber Music Competition at the University of Michigan. Or maybe it was right around then at another performance maybe that we premiered it. And yeah, so that was our first experience, was with that piece, the first piece on the album. And as we were doing that, we were like, well, there are a lot of really great composers here at the university. Let's commission some more people. So we started having conversations with some people. I think the first couple people that we talked to were Carolyn Schubring, who wrote Red Leaf Collection, and Nina Shaker, who wrote Red. So we talked to them at the end of that year, of the first year. Then the following year was when we started actually, we like came back to school, had follow up conversations. We're like, all right, still interested. Added some more people. We added Daniel Zlatkin, Gal Flagello, and Carl Ronneberg. Um, yeah, and so it kind of grew into this, this multi composer thing, and the goal was kind of always to record these pieces because the idea was that recording this music kind of solidifies it in the repertoire in a way that just performing it a couple times doesn't as much. So we really wanted to record it and like make our mark in the reed quintet repertoire, and also just like really really be able to um showcase these amazing composers and friends that we've worked with on this music. um yeah, and so the logistics of that we weren't worrying as much about it until like towards the end of our time at Michigan. And I think Mickayla, you can take over here.
Yeah. So I think it was because that last year was when all these commissions kind of came in, aside from the
Yeah.
first one. Um, so I had just joined the group, and all of a sudden we have like 5 new pieces. Well, I guess 4 at the time.
3 or 4.
But 3 or 4, they were coming in, and we were kind of like, yeah, we need to record a CD. And then we were like, oh my god, how do we do that? That sounds like a lot of work, which it is, by the way. For anyone who hasn't recorded a CD out there, it disclaimer is a lot of work and a lot of money. Um, but um, we've had some great role models and know a lot of people who have done it. So just kind of going through that process, and we started performing the works, and um basically, oh, we also applied for like a mini grant through the University of Michigan Excel program, which is kind of an arts entrepreneurship program that the School of Music, Theater, and Dance has. And it's a great program, and there's lots of mini grants that you apply for, and proposed recording the CD. And so we got a mini grant for that, which was not enough to cover the whole thing, obviously. Um, but we decided, okay, we're probably gonna have to try some crowdfunding. So over that summer, after we graduated and after we got silver at Fish Off, we kind of regrouped and started planning. And we actually premiered another 2 of the pieces.
3.
3. 3 of the pieces at National Sawdust in Brooklyn, New York. Which, for those who don't know, National Sawdust is an awesome venue in New York City. Lots of new music groups are playing there, and one of the composers was able, of one of the pieces, Daniel Zakin, he was able to get us a concert there. And we played on this concert and premiered 3 of the pieces. And I think it was 3 months later, 3 or 4 months later, we recorded the album. So before that, we had to make a plan of how we're going to pay for all of this. So we actually did a Kickstarter. So for those who are familiar with crowdfunding, Kickstarter is one of the more popular options. And we made videos and social media posts and shared the crap out of it. Asked our moms, asked our dads, asked our
I
cousins,
remember
asked our
seeing those posts.
yeah, I'm sure
Keep
you
going. Keep
yeah,
going.
I'm sure you all saw it. I'm sure many of you listening saw it because we were very annoying about it. But yeah, we raised over $8,000 on the Kickstarter, and then exceeded our goal, which was great. I think our goal was 8,000 and we got more than that.
Yeah.
And then we had our mini grant. And so yeah, our budget was just slightly under 10 grand. And that involved 3 days of recording, which I'm sure we will probably never do again.
Yeah.
3 consecutive days of recording.
Yeah.
So
6-hour days.
yeah, well, it was 6 hours of like actually playing. It was quite ridiculous, but yeah, so what we did for the actual thing, because at this point we were long distance. We were in a long distance relationship. That's what it feels like. Being in a long
A
distance chamber
5-way
group.
long
Yeah.
distance relationship.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah, it's crazy. So we had gotten together, obviously, to premiere some of the pieces at National Sawdust. And then we had gotten together over Thanksgiving, did some local concerts here in Ann Arbor, and did a ton of rehearsing. And then came back together in December to record the album. I think we rehearsed for maybe like four days or so before the recording session. But shout out to Dave Shaw, acoustic. He's the best. He sat with us for 3 whole days. We recorded 2 pieces each day. How many minutes of music was that? I don't even remember.
It's like an
all a
hour.
blur.
I think the album's like an hour or
Yeah.
less than that. I don't remember. Like
Yeah,
50 or 60
so
minutes.
yeah, so we did like basically 20 minutes of music a day. And for those who aren't familiar with recording a CD, it is take after take after take until you get it. And so we went in with a plan, and that was a big takeaway. And we're really glad that we did have a very solid, drawn out plan, with obviously room and expectation that the plan could go wrong at some point. But having it planned out and spaced out really helped us to be able to do it. So we did 2 pieces a day, piece in the morning, piece in the afternoon, lunch break. But for most pieces, we would do a larger chunk, section of a piece that made musical sense. And then we would do smaller chunks within that larger chunk. And we'd do anywhere from 1 to 10 takes of the smaller chunks. And, there were moments where we'd just be trying to get one note or one beat,
Oh yeah,
It's so the most detailed, incredibly detailed, like infuriating process.
yeah,
It's
if I can just butt in for a second, my favorite the the two measures that required the most takes on the entire album were two measures, I think, in the second movement of Daniel Zakin's piece, Out of Bodies, that go quarter note, quarter rest, quarter note, bump, bump, bump. I think we had like 40 takes of that or something. Because, at some point, you're tired and it's just like, it just gets harder and harder to get it right, even though it's one of the most simplest things that you can ask a group of professional musicians to do. Um, yeah, I think like there's like at one point we were just rolling the microphones and just doing it like I wasn't involved. I think it's like three of them, and just like rolling it until we got it.
well, because we'd get two of the notes, and then the third one there'd just be an ever so slightly but up. Like we're again back to the response thing of like reeds responding at different times. Man, so infuriating. But honestly, there were some really great moments though within that. We did some of the best music making we've done, I think, just really really going for it, because at this point time is money. We were, I won't disclose how much money it cost per day to record, but it was kind of you felt the pressure, and you don't want to waste anyone's time, and you got to be on top of your stuff, and so we just kind of went for it. We were idiots though and decided to stand the entire time
Yeah,
because we always play standing up. We have never once rehearsed sitting down.
it was
And
never
so
even a consideration.
we didn't even think about it because we're idiots. Not actually, but kind of. It was just like, well, because we never sit down when we play. We stand up. That's what we do. Oh man, our feet hurt so bad after that.
Welcome to life as a percussionist.
Right.
Well, I mean, like percussionists we're also not blowing on things the whole time, and I think that's more tiring personally than like moving your arms. It seems like the more I've always thought that the more we play, the more energy we have to keep going. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure there's a percussionist or a few percussionists out there that would be like, that's not true. But I've always felt like the more I play, the better my hands feel, the better I feel playing. And that's just not true for the lips or the lungs, right? We don't have to control our breathing in order to get, in order to get a good sound. So so standing can be more comfortable for some instruments, and it can be like not at all comfortable to play certain instruments. But I wanted to ask, you said that you mentioned just how expensive this undertaking is, and I of course won't ask for any specific numbers, but would you say that just the time in the studio was the most costly thing of the whole endeavor?
No.
Really?
It was expensive, yes, but post-production is actually more expensive.
Mastering?
Yeah, the mixing or the piecing everything together and the mixing and the mastering.
Yeah.
Yeah, the studio time was expensive, yes, for sure. We actually recorded in a church with great acoustics. Love that place. The venue, I can disclose that we maybe paid a few hundred for that. It wasn't too bad for the venue, but the recording days were expensive, yes, but the post production, you get charged hourly for that, and you don't know how many hours it's going to take. So it really just depends. I mean, yeah, the whole post production process was the most eye-opening experience for me for the whole thing.
Yeah.
The playing side of it was hard and it was grueling, but it was extremely rewarding, and we got done with it and we're like, holy crap, we just did that, you know? And it just, you have that feeling of like such a sense of accomplishment, because you're just like, wow, we've been working on this project for over a year, 2 years, I guess, at that point, and we just did it, and it feels great. But then at least personally, I did not realize how much goes into the post production. And I mean, obviously, you hear about it, but like the actual piecing together, I didn't realize that we would be involved in so much of it. And we what we did is we get all the takes, we had a scribe, my friend Emily, she's a percussionist. She was our scribe, and so her job during the actual recording was to write down which takes were better for what measures, and this take was good for this reason, don't use this take, definitely don't use this take. Or maybe this one could work, but try to pair it with this one, just kind of like a key to the whole recording process, because obviously we don't remember what happened every single take. So her job was to sit there and dictate all of that. So we took that, and we took the how many hours worth of feed? I don't even remember.
18
Um,
is the math, I think. 18 hours.
no, it wasn't. No, it was not that much. It was not that much. It
Well,
was like,
okay. Sorry. Yeah, that's the time we
that's
were in
way
the
too many.
studio. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was something.
No,
It must have been pretty big. I
it
don't
was
actually know the timestamps.
no, it was I can't. It was like,
I mean,
okay, I don't know,
for some
whatever.
perspective, the longer pieces, not the longer, but the multi-movement works. I think the total number of takes for those pieces were like in the hundreds. Um, not hundreds, but like in 100 plus.
Yeah.
um, and the single movement works were less than that for the most part, I
Yeah.
think.
But we had hours worth of material to listen through.
Of
And
yourself
so
playing.
of yourself playing. Yeah. And so you put the scribe's notes, like the key, with the recordings, and then you listen through it all and dictate what take you would like to use for essentially each measure. Obviously, there's chunks in there, but then so basically you piece it together. So we did large chunks first. There was generally at least 2 to 4 of us working on a piece at a time. We did some of it in person, we did some of it remotely, which was really hard.
Yeah.
But we would I think we put our preferences before meeting together, or we would listen to it together and listen to the different takes. Some of it was easier because we had a note from Emily that was like, use this take, definitely use this take. But
Yeah,
then
this
there
was
was
the one.
others where it's like, okay, maybe this one, so then we'd compare, and then we would talk it out and be like, okay, well, I think from this measure to this measure, we should definitely use this take. But for this measure, we should see if we can drop in this take, but then go back to the other take. So it's literally like,
Minutia, the smallest details.
Yeah.
The smallest details. And I mean, like, I'm sure there were instances where we were like, Dave, can you drop in this one note in this one measure from this other take because it was kind of crappy in the main take we want to use? And he'd be like, yeah, sure, or absolutely not.
Yeah, that is hard.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Dave Shaw is a master at this. Like, he is
he's a
just
magician.
incredible work on this kind of thing. And he's an Eastman alum as well. And
And a Michigan alum.
And a Michigan alum. Yeah, and I mean, it's just it really is the smallest details, and sometimes it's like you have to make some trade-offs. Like oh, in
Yeah.
this take, one person doesn't sound as good, but in this other take, this other person doesn't sound as good, and so you have to make some trade-offs about like what helps the overall sound.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
it's a long process. It's a long
it's
process.
yeah, and it's piggybacking off of that, it's very much you do have to like make some sacrifices. Like there there are things on that album, I won't disclose what, that I might not be playing 100% correctly that made it on the album because that was the take that it sounded the best for the rest of everyone else. I mean, it's minute things, obviously. It's
Yeah.
very like very minute. You're going to the like the details of the details. Um, but maybe my rhythm was just like slightly off, or um, stuff like that. Or maybe there was like my note just didn't speak the way I wanted it to. I'm thinking about one note in particular that made it on the album that like it was just a little bit of a crack, and but there was no avoiding it because the other takes that we had that I sounded good, someone else didn't. So, it's a team effort for
Mhm.
sure.
Were you
But oh, go
sorry?
ahead.
Were you all individually mic'd
Yes.
in the studio?
Yes.
Did he
Yeah.
also have an Omni
Yeah.
to get the ensemble?
Mhm.
Yes.
Interesting. I was curious because I've seen some of your videos online that's on your website, and I was wondering because I'm a gearhead, what recording equipment you each individually kind of own.
So we have a
um
simple mic setup that
yeah.
Mickayla keeps that you can talk about, Mickayla.
I need to look up what kind they are, but they're just the little stick mics.
Okay.
They were not very expensive.
Yeah.
They were
Really?
maybe like 150, two
Mm-hmm.
hundred dollars. Um yeah, we just have, set them up on a tripod and or a no, a mic stand, duh, not a tripod. And honestly, some of our videos are taken with my iPhone.
I don't think
um
anything that's public.
oh really?
Yeah, I don't think any of those videos are public.
Uh no, I think some of them are.
Maybe,
But
I don't remember.
on occasion we've used Sagar's DSLR camera.
Mhm.
Um we've used various things. We haven't invested in any like expensive equipment for
Yeah,
sure.
and it's
Just
always
the kind of bare bones.
tricky, like, we're at the point now where we're like, "Okay, we can't be for any live performance, we can't be doing this on our own." Like,
Yeah.
because it's just so much every time we've tried doing it recording, video audio on our own, in a live performance, there's something's always gone wrong, and it's like there's no one there to watch it to make sure everything's going right.
Yeah, you really need a dedicated person
Yeah,
watching,
Yeah.
pulling all the strings, so that you don't have to focus on that because you need to focus on
exactly.
like performing and
Right,
not
Exactly.
right.
on. That's a question because I've stage managed for smaller groups like that. Do you have a friend who kind of stage manages or just stage manages your live performances, or do you kind of like handle that yourself?
It it depends where we're at. I
Yeah,
think. When we're out on tour, like it's kind of hard. It depends on what we're doing, Um but in the past, yeah, we've had, especially if we're like in the Ann Arbor area, we definitely bring friends and make them help us.
mhm.
For sure. Yeah. But we've also performed where they're provided for us. So
Right.
it just kind of depends.
Speaking of behind the scenes kind of minutia, Mickayla, you brought up using your iPhone for recordings. I heard that somebody's iPhone was used for the album cover art of all the leaves. Is that true?
Yes. I legitimately took the album artwork um picture myself. Um did a little bit of Photoshop, not a whole lot though. And yeah, so actually it's a fun story. The album's titled Red Leaf Collection, and the photo is of the actual Red Leaf collection that inspired the piece. which is quite wholesome and cute. So Carolyn Schubring, the most adorable, amazing person ever. She's from Arizona, and when she moved to Michigan to go to school, she had never really experienced a true fall before. And so as her freshman year, she was walking around the campus and saw all of these red leaves and just started picking them up and collecting them. And she was just kind of obsessed with them and thought they were really cute. And so when we asked her to write a piece, she kind of was like, I think I should write a piece about this. And um, you know, we kind of see it as like a little bit of a full circle moment, and that's why we ultimately decided to name the album Red Leaf Collection, because these pieces are our Red Leaf Collection. You know, like this is our collection of things that you know, commemorate our time at the University of Michigan, and the relationships that we built there and the experiences that we had there. Um and so they kind of go hand in hand to each other, because that's kind of what that piece symbolizes in a way, just the red leaves of Michigan, and you know how fall is in Michigan. And so it's just kind of like a wholesome cute moment, and then we're like, okay, we have to name it Red Leaf Collection.
That's a great story. As a Southerner who moved up to Rochester, New York for her master's degree, I appreciated having seasons come at the proper time. In Texas, we get
Yes.
leaves still falling in like February.
Right.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took the photo of the actual leaves. I positioned them myself. It was honestly like, I am no professional photographer, but like I bought a light, and like a photo light, and used like a white sheet and did it, and it turned out way better than I thought it would. So it's amazing what you can do with your brand new iPhone 11. So yeah,
Should have gotten an
Not.
Apple sponsorship for that.
I
yeah.
was just
Shout
gonna
out
say.
Apple. Yeah.
Okay, so you've told us the story behind Red Leaf Collection on your album. Can you briefly tell us about the other pieces, and how you worked together with these composers to commission this music?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, the first piece on the album was like a year-long process, pretty much, or like half-year-long process, in terms of workshopping it, and then performing it. And then the other pieces, like Mickayla mentioned, we premiered three of them at a concert at National Sawdust. So we, for the most part, Red Leaf Collection was we did during the school year. And that and From Lidless Eyes were the only pieces we had premiered before we graduated, because at the time we were getting the scores for the rest of the music, it was like fish off prep time. And we were like, we don't have time to look at this yet. We will work on it over the summer. um, so, other than those two pieces, the other four were primarily rehearsed and everything over the summer. So we did one session. Um, I think we had met like once early in August, which was kind of like onboarding for Nico. It was his first time with us, and then we workshopped three of the three pieces that we premiered at National Sawdust: "Red" by Nina Shaker, "Out of Bodies" by Daniel Zlatkin, and "Self Talk" by Gal Flagello. So we used one of the halls at the university. They each came by, and we like spent like a rehearsal just working with them on the music. Just getting an idea of their vision and working out some kinks and things like that. And then later that month in August was the concert. So Daniel Zlatkin very graciously hosted us at his family's house in Connecticut. Um, so we were just rehearsing in his basement for like a week. We were workshopping his piece. I think Gala came to the
Yeah.
house, right?
Yeah,
Gala
she
came
did.
to the house. and we worked on it further with her there. Nina, we didn't meet, I don't think, until we got to New York. I don't remember. She might
We
have been
we
there.
worked with her before we left, I think, or
Oh
something.
yeah. I don't remember exactly the timeline,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we spent some of that week touching base with them again, just making sure we had their we were representing their music, as best as we could. Premiered the pieces, and then, like Mickayla mentioned again, we did a rehearsals and a concert here in Michigan in November of 2018, um, where we just did a concert of the whole album, all 6 pieces on the album, which was actually the premiere performance of "Be That Empty" by Carl Ronneberg. Um, and and yeah, I mean, it's just we tried to approach it as collaboratively as possible. Making sure we are uh, really in touch with the composers, and like I said, representing their visions as best as we possibly can. And I think that's one of the real joys I get from playing new music, is just that kind of relationship building, and um being a part of the creative process of creating this music. There's things that are in these pieces that were decisions that we made, individually and or as a group, with the composers. And so that makes it even more so, like, it allows us to have a little bit more, I don't want to say ownership, because that's, I don't think that's the right word, but it's a piece of us is in each of these pieces, um you know that we contributed for, in terms of the composition, not just the performance of it as well.
Mickayla, maybe you can speak to this. Is there something in general that the group learned, or maybe you individually learned about working with composers this closely? How did the group grow over the course of this whole experience?
I mean, I think this is aside from Fish Off, this is the next thing as far as growth for the group. Like biggest thing. It was not only our first time recording an album, but it was our first year being long distance and doing that at the same time, and learning to switch from that mindset of school. And when you're at school together, you rehearse, a few times a week, and you always see each other and you're always around each other and you're constantly rehearsing together. So you don't necessarily have to prepare as much for rehearsal as you still prepare obviously, but not to the same extent of, we haven't seen each other in 2 months and we have 3 rehearsals or less before a concert, or we have essentially days together prior to recording a studio level album, and it's a lot of pressure, and it was a really transitional time in all of our lives as well. People pursuing different degrees. I had just started my first full-time job, where I'm salaried, and my time is not always my own. And um just navigating those changes in our personal lives, as well as in the group. And um as far as like working with the composers go, I think working with them was actually a breath of fresh air, in the sense of, we weren't getting coaching, like
Yeah.
we were used to getting coached once a week, and then all of a sudden that's gone and we're on our own. Granted, we all have degrees in this and we know what we're doing, but still it's nice to have that feedback. So I think those composers were almost that feedback for us, in a sense, because they were keeping us true to what's on the page, and also just helping us see it in the way that they saw it when they wrote it. And um I think it was a huge growth experience for us, in the sense of, I don't want to say it made us grow up, because that's not necessarily the right way to put it. Um but it was for many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, our first like, oh wow, like this is how it works in the real world. We don't have the luxury of being together in school and seeing each other 3 times a week. Um, and thank God we had that and built that foundation that last year prior to,
Yeah.
because we would not be here today if we hadn't been so serious that last year in school together. If we had not meddled at Fish Off, I don't know if we would still be together. Not because we don't love it, but because, you know, that that drive that we felt and that momentum and sense of accomplishment we felt from, oh wow, if we work this hard together and can play this well together, we have something so special, and we have, the potential to make such an amazing impact on um the Reed Quintet, and to, put our stamp on things and how we see things and contribute to the growing, genre. And we saw it as an opportunity that we couldn't, pass up. And recording this album, I think, was our way of, you know, defining ourselves as a group, in a sense of like, we started this thing from scratch. Obviously it's the composer's music and we would not be anywhere without them, but to bring their music that, we asked them to write, and to bring that to life and from start to finish, it was such, and it's such a growing experience for anyone to do something like that. But um I think it really made us realize, how, what a special thing that we have together, and how great that is.
Let's transition a little bit into talking about, unfortunately, how this last year has changed the scope of things for us. I remember, I think it was in the summer of last year, summer of 2020. I remember watching, maybe over Facebook Live, you guys had an album release party. How
Yeah.
did COVID change the way that the album promotion went? That changed
Oh,
your plans significantly.
it screwed everything up.
Yeah. Absolutely. um yeah, I mean, if pandemic hadn't happened, we would ideally have done a in-person release party, where we would have gathered hopefully a bunch of the most of the composers, a bunch of our friends, and just like performed some of the music live, and just like had a blast and just celebrated the release of the album. But pandemic hit. It hit like, I think, I want to say maybe like a month or so after we had gotten the final uh the final masters for the of the tracks of the album. um and so we were sitting on these, and we were like, oh, how are we going to release this thing? And a couple months into it, we were like, well, everyone's consuming content digitally right now anyways. We might as well just put this thing out digitally. It's still only available digitally, and we're working on making getting a physical release going. But um yeah, and we thought of some ways that we could still celebrate the thing. And we're really fortunate that almost all the composers were able to be there. Nina was almost going to be there as well, but she ended up last minute not having to be somewhere else. um so it was really great to just we had a plan. It was like, it was a surprisingly well-oiled machine, the whole release party. Like, we had a plan. We had, like, we were all prepared with questions that we wanted to ask the composers. We told them what they were, so they knew how they wanted to answer. Had clips of the album ready to go, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. People were in the Zoom chat, just like keeping us on track of the schedule, like being like, all right, wrap it up, get the clip going, wrap up this composer and move on to the next one, whatever. Um, yeah, and so that was kind of, you know, the start of it. You know, that was the one big thing that we had that we needed to get done at the start of the pandemic. The other complication that came up before pandemic was even a factor was, as Mickayla mentioned, Joe, our former bassoonist, had decided to leave the group before, you know, everything was shut down. So we were sitting, you know, no live performances happening with a four-person quintet. Um, and so, you know, we had just auditioned some people, and you know,
Before the pandemic,
before the
and
pandemic, and
we were about, you know, in March, we were trying to do another audition,
mhm,
but obviously
right.
pandemic.
So that was one of the big complications that came up even before this was a factor. So thankfully, you know, Mickayla mentioned Jaquain was moving to Detroit to uh, start playing with the Detroit Symphony. Um, and you know, we auditioned him when he moved in the fall because we're not he was living in LA. We weren't going to fly him out in the middle of the pandemic. That didn't make any sense. So we auditioned him in the fall. You know, he very graciously agreed to join the group. And so then started the conversations of, all right, so what are we going to do now that we have a full quintet, right?
Because
Um,
everything's canceled, and
exactly,
you
exactly.
know it, and we were at the disadvantage of not having that fifth member at the beginning of the pandemic, so you know we couldn't hop on the digital train, and and welcoming a new member to your group always takes, you know, some time to play together and really get used to each other again, and you know we've been through that before, and it's not a problem, and it's always a great new learning experience to have a new member, but you know we had that challenge of, oh, we can't actually see each other,
Hmm.
because we are living in various states, and that whole travel aspect was a hindrance,
Yeah.
so
Um,
we were oh, sorry, go ahead, Sagar.
oh, well, I was just going to continue and say that, like, you know, we at that point, you know, we started getting Jaquan on board, and then trying to address the problem of, okay, well, you know, we have a five-person quintet now. We can start doing something. We knew we wanted to put out some kind of content over the internet somehow. Uh, you know, and I'll get to the Patreon, but Patreon or not, we wanted to be producing some sort of regular stream of content because it had been like, you know, at the time we had announced Jaquan at the end of February, it had been like since August, I don't think we had posted anything on social media, which is like a big no-no in terms of digital marketing. Um, and so that was the first step. We were like, okay, so what can we do? We kind of settled on doing these weekly multi-track videos of, you know, some of our favorite Reed Quintet music, and sprinkling in some solo repertoire in the middle. Um, and and yeah, I mean, it's been really, at least for me, it's been really rewarding in multiple ways. One is that I've had motivation to practice, period, but practice solo repertoire and get it, and not just like practice it just for the sake of practicing it, but practicing it to get it to a performance level, which is something that, you know, I'm sure most of us have struggled with in the last year, just because there have been no performances to practice to that level. Um, and then the quintet stuff has been like uh, you know, I've dabbled in video editing and stuff in the past, but like, you know, really getting more into that, like all of the video audio editing you may think goes into those quintet videos is I'm doing that. We're not hiring anyone else to do it. That's me. Um,
Just
and so
curious.
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just curious what software you use for audio and video editing.
I use the Apple software because I got a great deal on them. It was like a while ago. It was like, oh, you're a student. Here's pay $200 and you get all of the pro apps. And I'm like, yes, please. um,
So what is that? Is that
that's
Final
Logic
Cut.
Pro and Final
Oh,
Cut
Logic.
Pro.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I dabbled in video editing, which meant like lots of video projects in high school using iMovie. Just like goofy school projects.
Sorry,
And so like
I don't like iMovie. I'm
I'm
sure
sure
your
I know
projects
just
were
like
great. iMovie is not, but go on. Sorry.
no, yeah, and so no, I mean where I was going with that is it was kind of it's like a natural extension, moving from that time to Final Cut Pro. I mean, um, yeah, so I mean it's been really interesting to try to figure out how this content works, and is it seeing how it performs and all that stuff. But it's been good, at least musically, to just like have performances.
Yeah.
I'm using air quotes here. Performance, like I said, bringing something up to a level where you would be performing it. And that has been, I think, the most rewarding thing about this, plan that we've set out to do for for the last couple months and the next couple months.
Yeah. And looking forward, we have two potential things to announce for this summer. We're not ready to announce anything yet, but we're gonna definitely get together twice this summer. Again, with the long distance thing and COVID, it's not ideal to really do more than that.
Yeah,
But I think we're all vaccinated now, or at least
close.
mostly
I'm getting my
closely.
second shot on Monday,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
surprisingly, I'm the last holdout now, which is like didn't think
Weird.
that was gonna happen, but
Yeah. Um, but so yeah, so now that that's a thing, we feel a little bit more comfortable. So we've got a couple things that we're going to do this summer. So stay tuned at Vanguard RQ. And then we're working on, booking stuff for next season now that people have figured out, okay, we can still do things sort of, kind of. It might be a little janky and social distance, but we're still going to do it. So, it'll be interesting to see how the next year unfolds. I mean, it's been definitely not a positive thing that we haven't been able to do as much during the pandemic, just with the timing of everything. Really, it's the timing that
yeah.
really hurt us, because we were in the midst of bassoon auditions right when it hit, and so that kind of screwed us over a little bit. But we're back on track now, and really looking forward to continuing and expanding on the work that we were doing prior to COVID. And before COVID, we had just done a residency at UMKC, and went on tour in Kansas City, and that was a really fun experience. And just kind of navigating this whole, okay, we're long distance, but we've got our stuff together, and we want to go play places, and we want to go give concerts, and we want to share our music. And
Yeah.
we recorded the album. The album's done. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Just playing and really enjoying playing with each other and sharing that with others. And I think that we're really excited to get back to doing that, because
Yeah.
we were just kind of like ramping all of that up. So now that we're back on track, I think we're really excited for this next year, and um looking forward to playing with Jaquain now. He's awesome. We're so excited. And really just excited to see where it takes us next.
Yeah.
Awesome. To wrap things up, can you guys share with us how our listeners can follow you on social media, connect with you, support you on Patreon? Give us all the details.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/VanguardRQ. Um, that we do you'll get, I think at one tier you get early access to all of our video content. At the next tier, we do a patron exclusive podcast monthly. So we released our first episode last month where we just it was kind of an introductory thing. We were just talking about how we each started our musical journeys, how we each got started in music, what led to us choosing our instruments, that whole thing. And our second episode, which I'm working on, which will come out later this month in April, is we talk about some of our favorite musical memories, performances. I think it's all performances mostly. Um, yeah, and and other stuff too. I'm sure we'll adjust and provide some other exciting stuff there as we get back to doing some more in-person activities. You can follow us on social media at our handle is Vanguard RQ, again, on Instagram and Twitter, facebook.com/Vanguard RQ. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You can learn more about us on our website at vanguardraq.com. I think that's everything.
Everything is Vanguard RQ.
Yeah.
Vanguard RQ. Well, you've got that whole thing down, the whole spiel. Everyone, you guys can find out, of course, more about Vanguard Reed Quintet at vanguardraq.com, and their album Red Leaf Collection is available to stream or download on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Mickayla and Sagar, thank you both so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Abby and Del. It was so great to see you again, Abby.
Good to see you too. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I know. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
It was great to meet you too.
Yeah,
It's good to meet you too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Open Parameter Podcast. Go check out our other projects like Open Parameter Ensemble and Open Parameter Hub at openparameter.net. Join our growing community of artists and patrons and help us fund those projects by becoming a supporting member at openparameter.net/support. Your generous donations will allow us to commission composers to write new music, commission artists to make new works of art, and provide paid performance opportunities for local North Texas musicians. Open Parameter is a sponsored project of Fractured Atlas, a nonprofit arts service organization. Contributions for the charitable purposes of Open Parameter must be made payable to Fractured Atlas only and are tax deductible to the extent permitted by law. Help support our community of artists and musicians today by going to openparameter.net/support and clicking on Donate Now. I'm Del Cook, Creative Director of Open Parameter. Abby Hawthorne is our music consultant and writer, Hannah Hughes is our graphic designer, and Stajara Danilescu is our visual and interactive media consultant. From all four of us here at Open Parameter, thank you so much for listening today. Please tune in again next week.